Ooh, good morning. How are you? I have my new microphone here, which I got from Taobao. I don't know if it's working. I could, maybe you're not even hearing anything, in which case I'll have to re-record this, but we'll see what happens. I hope the sound is good, better than before. Anyhow, a lot happening in Hong Kong cinemas this week. A lot of new films. It seems to be disaster. No, not disaster week. I don't want to say disaster week. I want to say radioactive week because there's a couple of films on similar subjects. There's the British film Radioactive, which I've seen, but I haven't written up my review yet, which I'm going to do that today, and I'll post it on my website. So if you want to read what I think about it, check out my website later on today, and it should be there. My website's howard4film.com, Howard, F-O-R, film.com. The other film is called Fukushima 50, which is about the Japanese nuclear disaster from a few years back. I haven't seen it, so I can't talk about it. But interesting that they're both programmed on the same week. It's two different distributors, so maybe a fluke. I don't know. Maybe they talked about it over some over some dim sum. I don't no idea. Then there's a couple. I think this one, Legally Declared Dead. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. There's another one called Lonely 15. I also haven't seen it. And then there's The High Note, which was a film that was supposed to come to the cinemas. Well, it's our cinema, but it was supposed to be released in cinemas all over the world. But because of the coronavirus, it went to, if I remember correctly, it went to Netflix. And but it did come here, and it opened here yesterday. So I'm going to talk about that one first. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that one right now. So The High Note is it stars Tracy Ellis Ross. If you know the show Blackish, I think there's a few shows in America that end with the ish, and she's in all of them apparently. But her biggest claim to fame on TV is Blackish, and she's become quite successful at this. She's won a Golden Globe. She's had a few Emmy nominations, but on the movie front, she hasn't done too well. Her last film, forget about big film. Her last film was 11 years ago. It was a film called Labor Pains, starring Lindsay Lohan. I don't know. I'd never even heard of it. I was checking to see where it got released, and it seemed to do well in Romania and Russia, and then I think it went straight to video pretty much everywhere else. Oh no, I think it also went to the United Arab Emirates, but pretty much everywhere else it went straight to video. So that was Labor Pains. Well, hopefully she's putting that experience behind her, and now she's back on the screen again, big screen again, in the film High Note. And this time she plays an aging pop singer facing a career crisis. Now the story's about Maggie Sherwood, who's played by Dakota Johnson. People would know her, of course, from 50 Shades. She was most recently seen on our screens in The Peanut Butter Falcon. Excellent film. I think it's still playing here in Hong Kong. You should check it out. Last year, she was in Bad Times at the El Royale, and also Suspiria, which I also liked. Maggie Sherwood, her character, is a 30-year-old personal assistant to Grace Davis, who's the character played by Ellis. And Maggie has been working for Grace for 3 years, and she has a job fairly down pat, although Grace has her diva moments when Maggie can do nothing right, in Grace's opinion. Hold on, I gotta drink some coffee here. Now, one day Maggie meets David Cliff, who's played by Kelvin Harrison Jr. If you've seen the film Waves, which I haven't seen, but he had a big role in that one. He was most recently in J.T. Leroy, the film with Kristen, what's her face? Whatever her name is, which I did see. I don't remember him being in the film, but anyhow. David Cliff is an undiscovered singer who lives a curiously lush life in his well-appointed home high up in the Hollywood Hills while he busks for pocket change on the streets of Los Angeles. Now, while Grace is trying to figure out her next career move, along with her longtime manager Jack Robertson, played by Ice Cube, Maggie she also wants to move her own career in a new direction, and she convinces David that she's an experienced music professional who wants to produce his first album. And Maggie and Grace's worlds bump along until they collide. Now, if you've noticed, I basically framed the synopsis of this film around Maggie, not around Grace, not around Tracy Ellis Ross's character. And that's the problem with The High Note. Its focus is on the wrong character. I like Dakota Johnson. I think she's a good actress. She's not afraid to make bold choices in the project she takes on. And she's perfectly fine here. Aside from her character being 6 years too old, I thought she did a good job here with what she had. But her character, Maggie, is far less interesting than Grace's character, than Grace. Now, of course, both women are at a crossroads in their respective careers, and I'd say that Grace has been dealing with people telling her who she is and who she needs to be for as long as Maggie has been alive. So, to me, I think the story should have been on Grace and not really on Maggie. Maggie was the secondary. Should have been the other way around. And obviously, if Maggie fails as a producer of an album by a musician that no one's ever heard of, it's no big deal. She can always try again. If Grace, however, goes against her manager and her record label and goes off in a different direction musically, she risks losing her fans and losing her reputation, damaging her reputation. Now, to me, that's a far bigger gamble than what Maggie's got to deal with. Now, I'll concede, though, that even Rod Stewart, he released 5 jazz albums, and that didn't derail his career. But it certainly didn't bring him any new fans. But, there is one line in the film where Grace, Tracy Ellis Ross's character, says something about a black woman over 40 doing a career change, or doing a career, shift, whatever you want to call it. That's really not been done. And she's right. So, there is a double standard here for men, women, and for whites and blacks. So, I think she's got the bigger risk. So that's why I think her story is a much more interesting story. The other problem I had with this story is this humongous plot hole surrounding David's accommodation, which doesn't seem to concern Maggie in the least. Is he a trust fund baby? Is he a drug dealer? Or is he simply house sitting for a rich friend? Like, you'd think she'd ask the guy she's about to have a professional and personal relationship with. Okay, professional relationship, maybe she can not ask, but she's about to have a personal relationship. You'd think you'd say, what are you doing in such a big house? Whose house is this? She doesn't ask that question. It even extends, this crazy plot hole extends later on, in the film, when Maggie invites David to Tracy's big event at Tracy's home. I don't want to ruin it. It just wouldn't happen. So, now, unlike that other recent on-screen diva, Miranda Priestley, that was Meryl Streep's character in The Devil Wore Prada, Grace is extremely likable, even as she's barking out orders to everyone around her. It's not like Ellis Ross doesn't know how to be a diva, though. Her mother's Diana Ross. She grew up with a diva, And there are also plenty of other divas running around that she could have used as inspiration, like Mariah Carey and Celine Dion. And I honestly think, the writer, Flora Greason, sort of had, Mariah Carey in her mind as she was writing this character. I don't want to say that she did, because I don't know, but I have a feeling she did. So, what? She needed to be, to me, Grace needed to have a little bit more fire and ice in her veins than what she really did. She was too nice, Even though sometimes she was a bitch or crazy, she was too nice. Now, all told, the movie's not horrible, It's perfectly fine. It's fine. It's, it's what I would call do-re-meh, It's not a great film. It would never be a great film. It could have been a really good film, but it's okay. So anyhow, the film opened yesterday here in Hong Kong. It's also streaming right now on Netflix. In other locations, if you're still stuck inside, or you don't want to go to the cinemas if they are open where you live. So you do have a chance to see this if you want. It's not horrible. It's not what it was. Not what it could have been, not what it should have been. All right. So that's the first film I want to talk about. The second one I want to talk about is 7500. Now this film is it got dropped the other day on streaming services, on Amazon Prime. So as far as I know, you never know here in Hong Kong. You know, the distributors are just trying to throw anything that they had got up on the screen. So it might end up at our cinemas here at some point in the future. But it is available right now on Amazon Prime. The film, as I said, is 7500. Basically, it's the premise of Sophie's Choice. If you don't know what Sophie's Choice is about, I'm not going to ruin it for you. But it's the premise of Sophie's Choice. They stuck it up 30,000 feet in the air, and instead of Nazis as bad guys, there are some disgruntled Turkish Muslims who are the bad guys in this film. And that's really what this is all about. This is a very bumpy thriller by first-time feature director and co-writer Patrick Vollrath, who comes from Germany. His 2015 short, called Everything Will Be Okay, or Alles wird gut in German, it received an Oscar nomination in the Best Short Film Live Action category. It didn't win. It lost to a film called Stutterer. I don't know. No, I never did see Stutterer. So this is his first feature. Now, in this film, 7500, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, people know him from Snowden and from Don John, 50/50, and of course, for many years he was the kid on the TV show Third Rock from the Sun. He plays Tobias Ellis, an American pilot for the fictional European Airways. Now, I know that's not a very creative name, but it's a very safe name. No one's going to sue them. No one's going to say, oh, you mean that airline. You know, to me, European Airlines is too generic a name. But anyhow, now on this fateful night, Tobias is acting as a co-pilot on a routine flight from Berlin to Paris, a trip that would normally take an hour and 45 minutes. Now on board is Gökçe, and I'm probably mispronouncing her name. It's a Turkish name. She's played by German actress Aylin Tezel. She's a half Turkish, half German. She's the half Turkish, half German mother of Tobias's 2-year-old son. Now Gökçe is a flight attendant for European Airways, but the pair keeps their personal relationship very private. They don't let it, most people apparently, we learned quite early on, most people at European Airlines don't know that they're a couple. Now, with just a minor delay prior to takeoff, the flight begins well, but no sooner does the fasten seatbelt light turn off than the crew comes under attack from a group of hijackers who fashion knives from bottle glass. Now that was very interesting. So they went to duty free, they bought some alcohol, then went into the bathroom, smashed the bottles open, and fashioned the glass into weapons. Makes me wonder, can you do that? I have to think about that. Like, because glass clearly gets by the X-rays. So, interesting. So what was I talking about? Now, although Tobias is able to fend off the hijackers and secure the cockpit, by doing so, he leaves Gökçe to her own fate. And for the next 20 minutes, or 70 minutes in movie time, Tobias attempts to make an emergency landing in Hanover, while the hijackers try various means to get him to open the door. I think that's all I'll say about it. Now, while many people are comparing this film to Paul Greengrass's United 93, remember that was the film about the hijacking that took place on 9/11, the flight that, the plane that where the passengers overtook the hijackers and crashed the plane into a farmer's field in Pennsylvania, if I remember correctly. There's very little to compare between United 93 and this movie. Here, almost all the action takes place in the cockpit rather than in the cabin. And I think that's a very good construct. I like that. But unfortunately, it creates 3 problems, or at least it did in this film. The first is it puts all the responsibility on one character to keep the audience invested in the story. And secondly, as a result, everybody else in the story becomes a caricature because there's very little time for character development. We really don't get to know the other people as well as we might have. Let's say in United 93, which takes place in the cabin, where there's time to meet the other people and get to know them a little better. And third problem, and this is a really bad one here, things conveniently happen inside the cockpit to try to keep the action taut. You know, you know, I'm not going to get into that. Now, fortunately, Gordon-Levitt is up for the challenge. He appears in almost every scene, and he delivers the goods. He is this movie, and he does a great job. I think this movie would be a complete disaster if the actor playing this part didn't, didn't give it all, and he really does. So he really makes this film. Now, of course, one can easily fault Tobias for not being able to speak one word of German after living in Berlin for 2 years. One of the hijackers, Vedat, played by Austrian actor Omid Memar, he's fluent in German or English and Turkish, and possibly Arabic as well. But, that's aside. But I have two other problems with this story. Hanover is only about 20 minutes from Berlin by air. It's so close that there are no direct commercial flights between the two cities. And probably you can take it like a charter flight, but there's no commercial flights between the two cities. By the time Tobias switches off the fasten seatbelt light, the plane is already it's probably already over Hanover. So why does it take another 20 minutes to get there? And here's another, why doesn't the control tower direct him back to Berlin, where presumably more resources are available to deal with the hijackers? Hanover's not a big city. You're so close, go back. Anyhow, that was another thing. But my second problem is the hijacker's motivation. I don't want to get into it and ruin it for you, but it seems a lazy way out, just as much as European Airways is a lazy name to give an airline. And so this was the problem, is that there was so much time spent on Tobias, which is okay, but there's not enough time to spend learning about the motivations of the hijackers. So what ends up happening is Vollrath just sort of does some really lazy writing so that we can understand them in about 30 seconds, and it just doesn't work. It didn't work for me, let me put it that way. Now, all being said, this is not a disaster of a film. In fact, it's quite entertaining, but that's because of Gordon-Levitt. He was fantastic in this film. So I would say, yeah, check it out. It's been available in its native Germany for a few months now. It's now available for everybody else on Amazon Prime, provided, you got Amazon Prime. So if you're stuck inside and you're looking for something new to watch, you could do a lot worse than 7,500. But if you haven't seen United in 93, definitely check that one out. It's a far superior film. So that's 7,500. That's all I'm going to talk about today. I'm not sure what I'm talking about next week. I know I've been seeing quite a few films. The distributors just keep throwing more films at us, and we're watching them. So we'll see what happens. And so I hope the sound on my microphone was good. If not, if you can't hear me, I'm going to have to do this all over again. I can't tell, so I hope it's okay. Have a good week. Have a good weekend. Please wear a mask. I don't know why this is still an issue. Wear a mask when you're out in public. See ya.